home, bitch. Calm down, War Machine. I just want to say that the Cortex Racing Torque Arm, and I'm sure a lot of other torque arms, Maximum Motorsports, for a live axle car, which is what torque arm's for, is legit. It's legit. Let's do the review. Let me start from the beginning. When I bought this car, I ordered it, it was stock, 2014 Mustang GT, and even with the traction control on, this thing was a handful. The ass end wanted to swing around no matter what you did. It definitely did not hook up in the corners, and you know, I decided to do something a little bit different and see if I could make a 2014 live axle Mustang GT handle. Yeah, that's one thing. You know, there's a lot of debates online about, you know, whether a torque arm is worth it, or, you know, just a good aftermarket 3-link. There is one sort of infamous online debate. I think it might have been on SVT, and some guys were getting into it over, you know, torque arm versus, you know, just regular, you know, suspension mods and a good 3-link. And again, I'm using that word loosely against, but the guys that didn't buy into the torque arm mod were autocrossers. Who was kind of raving about the torque arm, and he tracks his car. I don't remember, it was a legit track like Willow Springs or one of those, you know, Laguna Seca kind of tracks. And I can tell you that that's where the torque arm really shines, is high speed, you know, sweeping turns. I mean, and powering out of, you know, tighter turns, sharper turns, lower speed turns. It's really phenomenal, but especially in those high speed sweepers. When my car was naturally aspirated, I could just hammer down and the ass end would not move. The car would stay flat and just motor through that turn. It was extraordinary. It still is extraordinary, but I think that, you know, I guess this is kind of a knock, you know, I'm not trying to be super negative with the autocross guys, but to me there's no other way of saying it, but zooming around a parking lot, you know, maybe what, 60, maybe 70 miles an hour, maybe they go a little bit faster, I don't know. There's a big difference between that and doing 120 mile an hour sweepers. There just is. And you know, maybe that's where some of the debate was coming from. You're not. My car still handled awesome before I put the torque arm on. After I did a big round of suspension mods, you know, shocks, struts, lower control arms, caster camber plates, you know, springs, and the whole nine. Yeah, it handled way better than it did stock. There's a guy in that debate that said that he had, you know, all right, I'm going to try it. So he put a torque arm on. I don't know who he was, and you know, he's like, yeah, it's not all that great. I don't know what other suspension mods he had done. I don't know if he was full of crap. I'm sure he wasn't, but I don't know how you could not tell the difference having a torque arm and then not having a torque arm. I don't get it, but parking lot, you know, it's not going to be the most transformative mod in the world, but get it out on a track or going around a high-speed turn, and it's pretty silly how good it is. It's amazing. One of my favorite mods when I was naturally aspirated, so you don't have to be a, you know, a super duper high horsepower car to really get the most out of it. On the install, the Cortex, one thing to be careful of on the install is lining up the torque arm. You do have to drill into the ears of your differential, and but you don't want to bolt it to those ears and then not have lined it up, because there's not a whole lot of room between your exhaust for that torque arm. I mean, it's tight. It is tight. There's not a lot of space. So what you really want to do before you bolt it to those ears is line it up first. Have your exhaust on and line up the end of the torque arm where it ends right here underneath the car, and get it exactly where you want it. Then mark those ears with like a, you know, wax pencil or crayon or something, and then you drill them out. Don't be afraid to drill it out. It's fine. You can take it. You can take a couple little holes. If you don't line your torque arm up and you bolt it to the ears on your differential, and now it's off center, maybe hitting your exhaust or a little too close, what you're going to have to do is drill out, make one of those holes a little bit bigger so you can, or both a little bit bigger so you can line it back up. You don't want to do that if you can help it. It's not the end of the world, but that's really not the way to do it. One thing I love about my Mustang, it's very quiet. Really be that guy, you know, with a really insane loud exhaust. I didn't know my exhaust was going to be this loud, and I know, dumbass, but it's loud. In regards to NVH, the Cortex torque arm doesn't add any NVH really. The Watts Link, the Cortex Racing Watts Link, maybe a little bit. It does have Heim joints, but barely noticeable. My car was just as quiet with the torque arm on as it was with the 3-link. Maybe one of the arguments against having a torque arm is the weight. You know, the weight of a torque arm versus a 3-link. But I'm here to tell you the difference in performance is well worth the weight, the little bit of weight that you gain with the torque arm. It's not even close. And the thing about aftermarket 3-links that I've heard, I don't know because I haven't installed an aftermarket 3-link, is that they're super noisy. They clank, they make a racket, and I've heard that, read that a million times in different posts. But I think a one-piece drive shaft, honestly, is going to transmit more noise than the torque arm, more than likely. But again, one-piece drive shaft is, I think, far superior than the two-piece stock unit. And you can can definitely make up any weight gains you incurred with the torque arm by going to a one-piece drive shaft. One-piece drive shafts are 18, 19 pounds. Some the carbon fiber ones maybe 17 pounds, something like that. And the stock two-piece drive shaft, I remember the first time I took it off and held onto it. I mean, it literally, there's a reason why people call it a boat anchor. The thing weighs a ton. You know, the torque arm isn't a complete magic thing that will, you know, you can throw any corner speed at it and it'll just take it. You know, it's still a machine. It's still prone to, it still has its limits. There's still an edge. I just haven't found that yet. I don't really want to on public roads. Maybe on a wide open space on a racetrack, yeah, be all right with that. But I'm not really trying to wreck my car. You're so fast, War Machine. Smack about how good the torque arm is. Yeah, I mean, the thing about the torque arm, when you do that, when you stomp it and you spin the tires up and the ass end does, it will move over when the tires are spinning up, and you get off it, it'll want to snap your neck straight and back up. So it definitely works. It does its part. Another thing about the Cortex stuff that I like is it's pretty. It's beautifully engineered. It's dare I use the word? It's elegant almost. It's almost, some of the other stuff, the Maximum Motorsport stuff, very you know, very heavy duty. And I think the Cortex stuff is just as heavy duty or really close, but there's less bulk to it. So it is very streamlined, very elegant. The welds are amazing on every single piece that they make. And again, the way that it attaches to the bottom of the differential cover itself. I mean, you have to have that differential cover to attach this torque arm, as well as the Watts Link. I think my exhaust is starting to make noise. Come on now, dude. You got the whole road. You're taking up the whole road, buddy. That's the thing, when you take off the stock 3-link and you see just how much play is in those rubber bushings, you realize that they're designed for NVH, to cancel NVH, and not for straight performance. They're not designed they're not designed for all-out performance at all. I mean, that's to be expected. You know, your average consumer would not buy a car if it clanked and made noise. The 3-link and the torque arm is where they're attached. So the Cortex Racing Torque Arm is attached at the bottom of the differential, and the stock 3-link or any 3-link is attached at the top of the differential. You know, the stock 3-link is about, what, 15 inches long, and the torque arm is 4 feet long, maybe longer. I mean, it's a long sucker. So there's a lot going on under my car. When you look at it, there's a lot of, looks like a jungle gym under there. But it doesn't feel like a Mustang anymore. That's the biggest praise I can give it. I guess that's maybe bad too, but I mean, it will freaking get down on a corner. And this thing will just, calm down, buddy. It's gonna be all right. And the torque arms really helped. You know, I think it's a definite advantage to high horsepower cars. It definitely an advantage to, you know, naturally aspirated cars as well. But when you have you know, a supercharger or twin turbo or whatever, Century, whatever you're rolling with, and you're, you know, over 600 horsepower, the torque arm it's a great asset because it just helps the car become more predictable, more controllable, and that's always a good thing. You don't want to be a cliche at a Cars and Coffee and take out a crowd of people. That's the one thing about having a, I mean, I'm 760 at the crank. When you have a ton of horsepower though, it's like if you've ever ridden a leader bike, you know, a 1000cc, you know, sport bike versus a 600. I had a Gixxer 750. That was, you know, nice in between, but you can't just stomp it, go to the wood, and not worry about it. I mean, with you know, when you're at over 700 horsepower, you have to be mindful of what the hell you're doing. You definitely have to be mindful. It's a whole different ball game. I don't want to say the car was more fun. It wasn't when it was naturally aspirated, but it was fun in the fact that I could just stomp it and go and not really have to think twice about anything, you know. It spin the tires a little bit in second, it even bark them in third, but it wasn't life or death. It wasn't like I was, you know, gonna be out of control. But you know, with this much power, when if you just go to the wood and stomp it, bad stuff can happen. And if somebody decides that they're gonna be a, you know, a jackass and just pull out in front of you, you got problems. When you're naturally aspirated, yeah, obviously you don't want to drive like a jerk off, but it's not the same type of acceleration, nowhere near. I mean, it's a whole different ball game. It's completely different, and yeah, the car is more fun having a supercharger, being as fast as it is. But you know, again, it's kind of like the difference between a leader bike and a 600. They're both fast, but the leader bike, you can't just roll on the throttle coming out of the turn. You know, you could be in the hurt locker pretty quick. And the same thing with a supercharged car. You do have to be careful of what you're doing. You have to watch that throttle. You have to manage it, and you do have to pedal it at times. I'm running Mickey Thompson street ETs. They're great everyday street tires. They really are. And when you heat them up, they're okay. But they're not the best in the world for hooking up for traction, and so you do have to kind of pedal it sometimes when you're losing traction. But oh well. I did set this car up to handle and not to be a straight line, just drag car, but I could throw some drag radials on it, and I'm sure it would do pretty good. Oh, that was a beat up Mustang. Whoa, some horses. That's really cool. My car scares horses, apparently. I don't know why. It's so quiet. Hi people, nothing to see here. My bad. Don't hate me. City workers did that road. The Cortex unit is able to kind of move around, do this, where it's connected right under the car here, and then where it's connected out back underneath the differential, there's a hinge there as well, so it can move up and down. Now, one thing with the torque arm is your pinion angle is what your pinion angle is. You can get adjustable lower control arms and kind of tweak it a little bit, but it's essentially set in whatever position it's set in. So as long as you're not slammed to the ground and lowered like crazy, you'll be fine. The stock drive shaft, the 2-piece, actually has I believe it has the middle joint is a CB axle on the 2-piece, so you're fine if you, especially if you're running a stock drive shaft. I have a 1-piece Dynotech drive shaft, and I also had a 1-piece Ford Racing before I did a transmission swap, but you'll be fine. So after I first put the torque arm on, I was playing around with it, and I was naturally aspirated at the time, and the car felt so planted. I wanted to see what it would do if it, you know, broke loose, and how much it would take to get it to break loose. And so I was at a dead stop, making a right-hand turn, and I just kind of stomped the throttle, and it about snapped my neck trying to straighten the car back up. I mean, that's how good the torque arm works. So the people out there saying that, yeah, the torque arm isn't all that, it doesn't really do anything. God, dog, my clutch is noisy. So the people out there saying that the torque arm, you know, isn't anything special, it really doesn't do all that, I don't know what the hell they're talking about, because this thing is ridiculously good. You know, it's awesome. My verdict on the Cortex Racing Torque Arm: there is no substitute. It's awesome. It's definitely the most transformative suspension mod that I've done to my car, and I've done a ton of suspension stuff to this thing. I have, you know, Koni's on it, Steeda springs, Cobra Jounce kit, J&M caster camber plates, J&M heavy duty adjustable lower control arms, Steeda rear shock tower brace in the back. I have, what else do I have on this damn thing? I have